Hi, everybody. This is Arthi from Human Chapters. I'll tell you a little bit about human chapters. Humans are living narratives with a past, present, and future. These narratives constitute of a number of chapters across a lifespan. The aim of these conversations is to highlight a chapter of the narrative and unpack its connections to other chapters. I don't care whether people are natural storytellers, but I truly do believe each one of us has a worthy story to share. An acknowledgement to country. We acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of the lands on which we meet. We pay respect to their tribal elders, past and present and emerging. We celebrate their continuing culture and we acknowledge the memory of their ancestors. Today, we are going to be speaking with Jinean and Camesha about their chapter Living Life with DLD. DLD is Developmental Language Disorder. Welcome, Jinean and Camesha. Please tell us a bit about yourselves.
Thank you so much, Artie. So I'm Janine. I'm a speech language pathologist. Camesha and I both live in Canada, and we're very passionate about supporting parents and children and educators and speech pathologists, basically anybody who is living life with DLD or supporting somebody who's living life with DLD.
Yeah, and my name is Camesha Russell. I am a educator. I'm a teacher, elementary school teacher, and I also have such a huge heart for really supporting parents as they navigate their child's um, as they navigate their child with DLD. We see so many parents just really. Like they're just not too sure what to do, or they really feel rather desperate. So I think my initial love for what we do started with really wanting to impact parents and supporting parents.
Beautiful. Um, Tell us about what DLD is and why were you drawn to DLD specifically?
That's such a great question. And it's so important because there's a lot of confusion about DLD. I feel like many families, they may read a little handout or read a paragraph, but they still don't quite get it, what
Mhm.
it is. And so, developmental language disorder is a lifelong condition. It starts in childhood and it continues to impact the individual throughout their lifetime. They specifically have difficulty with understanding and or using language, and that's any language they speak. So their first language, if they're learning another language, that too. It's not just an issue with, say, learning a second language. All the languages they use are impacted. And the difficulty that they have with understanding and or using language in any capacity, whether that's listening, speaking, reading, or writing, that can have real impact on the child's self-esteem, their confidence, their academic experience, their social experience. It impacts their job prospects in the future. We know that kids with DLD, especially if they don't have the support that they need, they do tend to struggle to get jobs or to
Mhm.
keep jobs. But when we say this to parents, we love to say there's so much hope out there. And when a child with DLD understands their DLD, when
Yeah.
they understand this is how my brain works, it works differently maybe than some other kids' brains, but when they know what DLD is, how it impacts them as an individual, because everybody with DLD is different. When they understand you can't see DLD, which is our theme for Five
Mhm.
Rattled, right? When they understand that and understand what helps them, their life can change. Their life can really change. And so that's one reason why we started this business, because we don't want kids to struggle in
Mhm.
silence. We don't want kids to be um, in school where the educator doesn't understand what's going on. And so they use supports that aren't necessarily effective because they're not addressing the language issue.
And I feel like as an educator, I had never heard of DLD.
Mhm.
And until my relationship or my connection with Janine, I feel like it really opened my eyes to the students around me and their like silent challenges that they were experiencing right under my nose.
Mm.
And because it affects so many children, 1 in 14, I feel like I kind of began to see it everywhere in with my students, and I think that's what really drew me to this cause.
Yeah, because these kids, they might get in trouble because people think, well, they're just a defiant child, or they're not trying hard enough. They're
Mm.
just lazy, or they're tuning things out. They're a daydreamer, when in fact there is a language issue at play. And if we're not directly supporting the language issue that the child is experiencing, oh, it can just be so heartbreaking for that child, and really impact their self-esteem. Or if the child is shy, they have a lot of pro-social behavior. I mean, if people think they're just shy, uh, they also don't get the support that they need. They're just kind of overlooked completely because they're not causing problems, so to speak. And we notice that this is particularly an issue for girls, for racialized children, and children who speak another language at home. And so we feel so passionate about supporting all people with DLD, but especially those people who are less likely to get the support, the identification, and yeah, because that impacts their lives so drastically.
Mhm.
Absolutely. And I love how you talked about language is everywhere. We can't possibly get away from it. It literally is part of the human existence. It is what makes us human, actually. But it's, we think about language difficulties or differences and think about one area, but don't necessarily tend to think about multiple areas at the same time. And I think about students with language difficulties as a broader term, but developmental language disorder, they can't get away from it at all. It's part and parcel of them at school, at home, at the park, at dance class, wherever they go, it's with them. So that's really important to acknowledge and think about language in that respect. It's literally everywhere.
And the impact is so
Yes.
lasting.
Yes.
Mhm.
And the lifelong part of this condition is really, it's almost like you've really got to learn about it, know about it, and then know with the right supports what works. So there isn't
Yeah.
a cure, but there are ways to work through it.
Mm.
Yeah.
100%. So we really feel passionate about giving parents
Mm.
that knowledge
Mm.
and that understanding so that they can work with their child and feel confident enough to work with the child's team, whether that's their speech pathologist, their teacher, anybody else involved, so that they can advocate effectively for their child. Yeah, we feel so passionate. And we've heard from parents,
Mm.
um, you know, we hear about what to do in an academic situation. Maybe here's some strategies we can use at school, but what about on a play date? Or
Mm.
what about at a birthday party? And that's actually what inspired the third book in our series. We show our characters, Dan and Daria, going to a birthday party. We show Daria struggling with some social anxiety because we know children with DLD are at a much higher risk of difficulties with mental health, specifically anxiety or depression. And we show her working with her dad, who feels empowered to support her. And we show those strategies that he uses. And we show kids self-advocating at different points in their journey. So some kids are more independent at self-advocating in a social setting, like Dan. Other kids earlier on that journey. So we want to show parents how they can support their child wherever they're at with what they need in a social context. And I feel like it helps DLD to click
Yeah.
for siblings, for grandparents, for peers when they see a story. And
Mm.
so that's why we thought writing these books could be so helpful. Also, kids with DLD themselves, that you're using language to explain a language disorder, that could be really hard. It's a fairly abstract concept, but when they see a child struggling with a peer at recess, or they see a child struggling in more of a school academic setting, whatever it is, it's seen like more. And that's what we really want them to see. Okay, here are real kids. They're cool. They have talents, they have strengths, and they have struggles. And here's how they overcome some of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we love
Um,
that.
Jinean and Camesha, Jinean, you've just given us a part of your chapter story, which is about the books, but I'll backtrack a little bit. Could you please tell us how your paths crossed and how your business idea or the books, what was that journey from conception to what you're doing now?
Mm,
That's a great question. Kamisha, do you want to answer that one?
so Janine and I met in Korea, um, which is amazing. So we are both Canadians, and we were teaching at I was teaching at an international school in Korea, and Janine's husband was teaching at that same school. So I was actually Janine's oldest daughter's teacher. And so we met during I think it was like a meet the teacher day.
Yeah.
It wasn't parent teacher interview, but it was like a casual meeting. And I feel like both of us knew in our hearts we were like, huh, we are gonna be friends.
Yeah.
But the level of friendship has just, because it's been over 10 years. Um, and we truly believe that, yeah, it's just been a God ordained friendship, and has evolved into this beautiful business as well. So, yeah, it started, our friendship was birthed in Korea. And when we even navigated coming home, we still kept in contact, and the rest was history. Because I think Janine is not just a business partner or a friend, she's like a sister to
Yeah.
me. So I think the evolution into our business really felt natural and really felt like this beautiful opportunity to share our passion for education and our passion for students. It just seems so natural for us.
Yeah, 100%. And we both have family members who have
Mm,
struggled with brain-based conditions.
Mhm.
We've both been in situations on a personal level where we felt alone, we felt unsupported navigating these conditions. And so I think that was also a part of our journey.
Mhm.
And we also both are lovers, we're helpers. We love supporting people, and that really feels fulfilling to us on a personal level. And so to keep going, even though it's hard starting a business, you're able to support each other. And just when we hear comments from families about how this or that encouraged them, this resource made them feel supported, it really fills us up.
mm,
That's amazing. Um, what a beautiful connection to begin with, but then that sort of morphing into a business and beyond that. You connected to each other, but also the ripple connections through your work with others is fantastic. Um, Tell us about your business name. What do you offer? Yeah, how did it like it's a 10-year long friendship, but business wise, where did you start? What did you start with? And
mhm.
what are you doing now?
I feel like what's really cool about business is how it evolves.
Hmm.
I think what we started our business focusing on has truly taken on a life of its own. So with like maybe like a year and a half of coercing Janine into this idea,
So true. She was on board way before I was.
It took me a little while to wear her down.
Yeah.
But and wear her down in a way, I think as individuals we all have our own like limiting beliefs. And I think Janine's limiting belief um crippled her from seeing the bigger picture. Um, but I think what's really beautiful is that we all like we've grown so much. Like the Janine that I see now is so confident and in her natural giftings, and as a friend, you see those giftings, you see those talents, so much more than the actual person does. So I feel like it was just so beautiful to like see Janine as a friend, as a sister, as a business partner evolve through this journey as well. But it started off as an idea to. It started off as a course. It started off with the passion of wanting to educate parents. And with Janine's expertise as well, we thought it would be a great idea to turn this knowledge into a course for parents. And my husband he runs his own video production company. So it was a really well designed, well produced course. And it took us months and months and months to curate our ideas and really like narrow down our focus. But sadly, our course didn't take off in the way that we had wanted it to. I think for us, it was a really good revelation, that an insight into what our parents' community actually needed at the time, and realizing that these parents are so tired, they're overwhelmed, they're often juggling other responsibilities, other children, and to be immersed in like a robust church, such a meaty course was hard for them to connect with. And then so from that, our Living a Life with DLD book series was kind of birthed, because we had to pivot and realize that we wanted to meet parents where they were at, and knowing that, okay, they don't have time to invest in a 15-hour course, but they do have time and energy to invest in reading to their child. Yeah, and then and I know Janine could speak to just the power of storytelling and how that impacts children. And yeah, it was just, I think I just want to share half of the story, so Janine, you could share
Yeah, that's the first half. And so one thing that we heard from parents, because we have a thriving online Facebook community, so parents are messaging in there all the time, making posts, they're concerned about this. And a very common theme that we saw was, how do I tell my child they have DLD? When do I tell my child that they have DLD? And there's so much stress that parents feel about having that conversation. And so we created this book series partially to help with that. When you can read about a child or two children with DLD and see their experiences, it's a natural way to start a conversation with your child about what DLD is. We also, in our stories, used really intentionally simple language and a lot of repetition, because we know our kids with DLD do tend to struggle with vocabulary words or learning new concepts or complex grammar. So we've got clear illustrations and a lot of repetition about what DLD is and how it impacts children in different ways for different kids. And so this really resonated with parents. This really resonated with children as well, because they started making comments like, that's just like me. They're like me. or I'm just like Dan. And they've never seen anything like that because we know it. There are now TV shows about autistic children. ADHD is mentioned in books, but for children's books and other resources, DLD is really missing from the whole scene, right? So we wanted to support parents in that conversation and in ongoing conversations. So now that you know you have DLD,
Mm.
what else can we talk about it? We want you to feel safe discussing it, and
Mm.
we want this to be an ongoing conversation because this is a lifelong challenge that you have. And so that's why when we heard from parents, can you show DLD in a birthday party setting? Or can you show DLD in this setting or that setting? Parents really feel like that opens up a safe conversation with their children. And then we created our animated podcasts
Mm.
showing Dan and Daria talking to each other as the experts about
Mm.
DLD. And I don't know if there's anything really like that out there where children with DLD are the experts about DLD in an animated, short, digestible setting. And so we're really excited about those. They're pretty new. I think, Kamisha, we've been posting for 6 weeks or a month, something like that.
You just posted episode 4.
Yeah. So we're trying to release one a week. And as a mom, I've got 4 young kids. It's been very fulfilling to me to see my kids participate in it. So actually, my middle 2 kids, my 9-year-old and my 11-year-old, they are the voices of Dan and Daria. And I've just seen my own children grow so much in empathy and understanding. They've even said, Mommy, I think this friend maybe has DLD. And of course, it's not their place to say that to anybody at school, but to be able to relate to that child with more compassion, to talk as a family about learning differences, about brain differences, and about how everybody has something to offer. That's been really, really exciting because we want to show, yes, Dan and Daria have some struggles, but they also have some huge strengths. And we want kids with DLD to resonate with that. Oh, yeah, this is harder for me. This is what can help me, but this is something I'm really good at. And also to know everybody has something in their life that's harder for them. Everybody has an area where they struggle and an area that's easier for them. And so we really want to empower kids to know you're not just what's hard for you. You're not just DLD. You're so much more than DLD, but we don't want to ignore it because then you struggle alone, right? And because we know DLD is an invisible disorder, we know you can't see DLD. That's kind of the theme for our 4th book, actually. That's coming out hopefully this weekend. Yeah, it's very new. And we repeat that phrase, you can't see DLD, over and over through the book because we want that repetition and we want people to recognize that part of it because it's so important.
Janine, do you have the books there with you?
Yes, I
And
have the
can you please show us, yeah,
sure.
the book?
So I have Dan and the Paper Airplane.
Mhm.
This is the first one where you meet Dan, and Dan, he's white, he's a boy, he tends to be a little bit impulsive, and so he's kind of the typical kid that gets diagnosed with DLD. We see some of his struggles. So at recess, he crumples up his friend's paper airplane because he's just frustrated. He has word finding difficulty. He can't get the words out to communicate why he's upset. And so this happens. And then we show a teacher recognizing, okay, maybe that's what's going on. We introduce the concept of meeting with a speech language pathologist, going through the assessment, and his very initial part of the journey with self-advocacy. And self-advocacy is a theme throughout all our books. Then the next one, we meet Daria. So she's a girl, she's Black, she's shy, she doesn't act out, she just kind of gets overlooked. And we wanted to show what DLD can look like for her and what friends who both have DLD, what that can look like. So it's really exciting for kids to see another child who has this. And this was the favorite book of our contest winner, Millen, she's in the UK. She's a 12-year-old girl with DLD, and she really loved this book. And so entered our contest to say which book she liked and won the opportunity to be part of book 4. So when book 4 comes out, you will see a real child with DLD. That's Millen, because that resonated so much with her. Here's number 3. Dan and Daria go to a birthday party, and mentioned a little bit about this one as well. And then book 4 is Dan and Daria and the theater exchange. And that shows Daria coming, or Millen, I mean, coming over from the UK to Canada where Dan and Daria live, and just interacting with them, showing them some of the strategies she learned in the UK, them talking about some of their struggles and strategies in Canada, and just showing DLDs everywhere, right?
Yes.
Different kids are at different points in their journey, but we're so excited to also have Millen part of the series.
And then we also have a parent guide as well. And our parent guide is super powerful because it takes parents through the journey of explaining what DLD is in parent-friendly, child-friendly language, and not just explaining what it is. There's activities that like prompt conversation and prompt, sharing. Like the first lesson, they're sharing their strengths and sharing and really taking the opportunity to celebrate the things that they're great at. And then there's, acknowledging the challenges, explaining the diagnosis, normalizing the diagnosis. And so there's about, is it 10 activities? No, there's 12 lessons, 12 activities, and then some additional resources in the back. So this has been a really powerful tool for parents as well.
Thanks for grabbing that, because I'm up in Northern Ontario visiting my family, and I didn't bring that one. So that's perfect.
No, that's great. And is there a particular age where you've, I suppose, seen within your community or people you're working with where they feel like that's a good age or that's a good time to start discussing DLD, thinking about the diagnosis, the abstractness of it, but also, that linking to their difficulties. How soon is too soon? What's the right age?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I'm not sure if there is a right age. I think all kids are different, but we are big fans of being open about struggles from the very beginning, being open about strategies, and really using a lot of reflexive questions to get a child thinking about what works for them. Oh, how did you do that so well? Using reflexive questions in that context as well. But in terms of age, we've got parents with 5-year-olds who've just been diagnosed or who are possibly going to get a diagnosis soon. That's kind of the working theory of their speechy, or the parent who's learned about it online. And they've found it really powerful. We've got 12-year-olds, we've got teenagers, even kind of more in the younger teen years. And sometimes they're just finding out at the age of 13 or the age of 16 because DLD is so unknown and misunderstood. And even with all the different terminology that's used in different countries, we're seeing improvement with that, but it's still an issue. So I would say at any point in the child's journey, parents don't need to be scared of, oh no, what if I give my child a label? Or, oh no, what if my child feels bad because we talk about this? I think if you do it intentionally in a really empowering, gentle way, it can actually help the child feel seen, feel heard, feel understood. And representation matters so much. So that's why being able to see children in books or on these animated podcasts who are like them, that can really open the door to that conversation. And maybe the child's 5 and they understand a little bit about what DLD is, but that's great. And they can build on that foundation as they grow. Maybe a 12-year-old will have a much deeper understanding of what DLD is, but still be able to build upon it. So yeah, I would say any age is a great age to start the conversation, but it's an ongoing conversation.
Mm.
And then, as part of your business, so you've talked about the books and the podcast, the Facebook community. Do you work with students with DLD and their families? And if so, what does that look like?
Mm.
Yeah, we both do. Camesha, do you want to start?
Yeah, I think what it looks like for me, whether I'm in the classroom or in the gymnasium or wherever we are at, I think it's really important for me to empower my students and empower the parents that I work alongside. Um, and um, I'm at a school where we get to be in kind of constant communication with parents. Um, I don't necessarily um, meet with parents in the same magnitude as Janine, uh, but I think being there, I think for me, it's really important to recognize them, see them, empower them, and kind of provide that support, that space where they feel safe to share their challenges and feel safe to brainstorm what we can do to support them. And then often helping parents kind of extend that conversation to reaching out to someone like Janine.
Yeah, and I would build on that too with what Camesha said, that I love working on metacognition with my students, teaching them to really think about their own thinking and what strategies work for them. Because I can teach strategies till I'm blue in the face, but if the child doesn't recognize which ones work for them, and if the child doesn't recognize, oh, this is a time where I should use a strategy. This is the time where I could self-advocate. I think that's, yeah, it's so important to get to that point where the child can recognize, oh, I'm struggling, but I know what to do.
Yeah.
Oh, I'm struggling, but I could ask for this strategy, or that type of thing. So I work a lot with children to think about, okay, did you understand that word that you just read? Or, and if you didn't, what could you do? If you don't use a strategy, what could happen? Right? So I feel like that really does empower the child because they can, before it gets too frustrating, hopefully they can recognize this is what's happening and then this is what I can do. And then did it work? Was my strategy effective, or do I need to try another strategy? And I know what the strategies are. I know what strategies work for me. And of course, it's a journey. It can take a long time to get to that point. But instead of focusing on being frustrated or focusing on what you got wrong, focusing on what's hard, you can focus on what helps. And that really empowers. And so I feel like when we teach parents to use reflexive questions, like I mentioned, when they can start really early on to teach their child to think about their own thinking. Even let's say they go for swimming, it doesn't have to be language specific. Let's say they go to swimming lessons and they forget their towel. Well, you can do a lot of thinking about, okay, what are we going to do next time? When it comes to swimming lessons next week, you could say, what do you think you need to bring in order to feel ready? Right? These kind of things, you're not nagging, get your towel, did you get your towel? You're actually empowering the child. And then they eventually develop that own inner voice to ask themselves, what do I need to bring when I go to swimming lessons? And that can transfer or generalize to, I'm sitting here with a writing assignment. What can I do to get myself started? What can I ask for? Oh, I need to make a plan. Maybe I can ask my teacher to help me make a step-by-step plan. Or maybe I can ask my teacher for a graphic organizer because I know what a graphic organizer is. And I know for me, that helps. It helps to have a visual there. And then I can use more of my brain power to work on the writing. So I think that is a big passion for both of us, is to get the child to think about their own thinking, know what helps,
Yeah.
and know what to do when they struggle. So then like we hope that their frustration doesn't just explode out of them, or they don't just sit there with a piece of paper crying for 20, 30, 40 minutes when it's time to do homework, and the parents crying in the kitchen because they're so frustrated. Let's empower them to know what to do in these challenges.
I have another follow-up question. Janine, you mentioned sometimes it can take quite a while to get to the point where they identify what's difficult. They think through what they can do about it. That takes a lot of self-regulation as well. Um, Within that point, I'm wondering about, I suppose, even from a professional stance, how do you get students to identify what is difficult for them when there are multiple things that we know that could be difficult for them, but in getting them thinking through it to try to
Mhm.
almost not necessarily pinpoint, but roundabout kind of there or kind of in that bucket.
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's not easy. I don't want to make it sound like, oh, we just do this and we're good for the rest of our lives, right? What I like to do is find a task where the child feels fairly capable, or where there are low stakes. They're not already frustrated. If we try to reach them when they're already really upset, well,
Yeah.
you know, that is not going to be effective a lot of the time. But if we can either challenge them just a little bit and then unpack what's going on in uh, maybe a context of one of their preferred activities or something that they're really interested in, maybe that would help them have more motivation. Or another thing I like to do is build them up, give them a lot of positive reinforcement, and then say, let's think back to what happened yesterday or last week. Do you remember when you were really frustrated? So the child is calm, they are regulated,
Mhm.
and then they can think in a safe place with somebody who they know cares about them and has their best interest at heart. Oh, yeah, let's think about what happened because Miss Mac or Miss Janine or mom or whoever it is that's having this conversation, they love me and they want to help me for
Mhm.
next time. So yeah, really unpacking it, talking about it, or talking about another child who struggled. Maybe it's a character from the book. Maybe it's something they saw on the animated podcast. This child struggled like this. I wonder what it would have helped them.
Mm.
That can start to build that foundation. But you're totally right that if the child is very dysregulated, it's probably not the time because that could get them even more frustrated, right? I also like to talk about what calming strategies work for you when the child's regulated. Maybe have a visual there for them. Maybe it's a little poster on the corner of their desk or something they can pull out of their desk if they don't, or on the fridge, so that they could refer to that and have practice with those self-regulation strategies. So maybe all they need to do then is use one, but it's not the time to go into fixing everything. Maybe they just need to calm down first.
Absolutely. And to you, Kamisha, within the classroom setting, within tasks that have high cognitive and linguistic demands, um, how do you work through that with your students?
Mm. Yeah, I think for me, um, having, I guess, two things. Lots of visuals,
Mm.
I think, is has been a really powerful tool. Um, and I think that often also gets my students connecting to the visuals in a way that if they're having challenges connecting through language, they're able to even talk to their peers and make reference to the images without feeling like they, without even thinking that, oh, I'm not connecting with the language. It just feels like a natural integration for them because it's done so much. And then and giving a lot of choice as well in the areas of activities that we do, so that they feel a bit, some form of autonomy and agency as they are learning new skills.
Yeah. Um, I frequently thought um that when you do ask a student with language difficulties, um, what's what do you think was difficult in this part? I actually
Mm,
thought that they found that question difficult, and just say probably 2 months ago, I assessed two students, and part of this assessment was I read a short paragraph to them. They had to listen to it and then retell it back to me. Or actually, no, not retell it, answer questions about the paragraph. And it was really interesting. I was reading and I looked at them to give them eye contact to just have that bit of connection there. And then I asked them questions. And in the fiction paragraphs, they were able to sort of, give you a few responses, but when it came to nonfiction paragraphs or the nonfiction details within the paragraph, it was really interesting. They couldn't remember. And at that point, I was like, what was difficult? And it was incredible. So one student said, I feel like I drifted in and out, like I was there and
mm,
then I wasn't, then I came back. And when I was listening, it didn't make sense. But then the other thing, and the other student also said the same thing. And then the second thing that they said that was similar to each other was, well, I'm trying to memorize all the words that you were telling me. And I was like, what do you
huh,
mean? Like you were memorizing phrases and sentences? Like surely
mm,
your brain has a ceiling. That's really taxing for the brain. So you didn't have a picture forming or you didn't visualize characters, and both of them are like, no, we didn't do that. And that
Mm.
was so interesting that both students, um, different genders, similar ages, just a few months difference, had very similar insights into their difficulties. But they're also very much, I understand. Oh yeah, they'll give, surface level information. Um, or they'll say a few couple of things that are accurate to almost fool the communication partner into thinking
Yes.
they know what they are talking about. But actually, if you dig a little bit deeper, they found it very difficult to sequence information or think about the concept. Or, yeah, it was just really interesting to me that both of them said, oh, we can't picture it. And I was like, oh, wow. So if you can't picture it and you're just trying to memorize, how on earth
mm,
would you be able to do that? Like that's, yeah. And for
mm.
how and they've been doing that for years. It
Years, right?
wasn't so they, yeah, like um, grade five,
Uh,
big students. Yeah.
How frustrating and how discouraging to go through school
Mm,
masking difficulties like that. It can
mm,
just such a toll on the child's mental health.
mm,
And when they don't know what strategies work for them, when they don't know what to do in that setting, and they just try to power through,
mm,
they so often get home exhausted too. Sometimes they don't want to do any other extracurricular activities because they
mm,
have this language fatigue. They don't want to talk to their parents, or they don't have the bandwidth left to do things that build them up. So yeah, it's
mm.
so great that you had that conversation, that
Yeah.
you could hear from them, what are they doing or what are they not doing? And then let's see, maybe visualization is going to be an effective strategy for
Mm.
them that they weren't aware of. So I love that you had that conversation, and I bet it felt empowering for the child to be able to just talk about, yeah, what is going on in my brain when I'm struggling. And maybe, oh, maybe we can look at if there's any diagrams or pictures, maybe we can look at the headings and the subject headings or the bolded words before we ever read it. Maybe that's going to help. Maybe that's not what helps me so much, but maybe I could try this, right?
Mhm.
Those conversations, like the one you had, or the beginning of those conversations, can change a child's life. I know I have things that are really hard for me to do. And so I have to think through, okay, well, how can I handle this? How can I set myself up for success? Because if I don't,
Mhm.
I'm going to be so frustrated and discouraged, right? So I really love that you did that. That's cool.
And the other thing that I think about frequently is when we're doing a task, we have our brain voice taking us through that task. You need to do this, and then we're going to do this. Oh, that wasn't quite correct. So you are going forward, but you're going backwards, and you're stopping to think. You're doing a lot of editing process. But if you do have language difficulties and disorders, that internal voice is language. So therefore, that is also, it's difficult to go through all of those steps and how many steps. Yeah, spend a lot of time thinking through what it must be like. And I don't know, which is why we need to really try to listen to our students, people we know that might be having these difficulties because we're not in their brain. They are in their brain.
That is so good. That is so good.
Um, the other question that I had, Kamisha, this one's for you. Not knowing anything about DLD, how
Mhm.
did and considering language is a very abstract concept, very abstract field. How did you get to learn about DLD and how did you conceptualize it for yourself to
Mhm.
understand it well?
Yeah. And I think, yeah, I attribute a lot of that understanding to Janine. She is such a gifted educator as well. I often tell her, I often say that, you meet people that are in particular career paths, and I feel like there's only a handful of people that I know that when I've met them, I'm like, wow, you are doing exactly what you have been called to do. And I believe Janine is one of those people.
And
Um,
so is Kamisha for teaching at Marvel.
so she is really great at conceptualizing and breaking things down for her students. And I think for me as an educator, it was really empowering to hear her how she connects with her students and how I could take some of those strategies and even just like the empathy piece, how I can model that to my students so that our more neurotypical students could also like resonate with
Mm.
um, that modeling as well. So yeah, I attribute a lot of my growth um, to Janine, and I think when I think of just my peers in education, I think there's a huge gap. It's not known in schools,
Mm.
unfortunately. And to be honest, I feel like as educators, we're just so
Mm.
overwhelmed as well. There's just so much to navigate and balance. And whether it's just more PD, more professional development, and that intervention really needs to be like a focus because I think we are letting students kind of slip through the cracks. And only the most loudest students are getting an SLP or getting an in Canada we call it an IEP, but
Mm.
get those interventions put in place. So yeah, I attribute a lot of that growth to Janine.
I
Thank you.
attribute a lot my growth to Camesha.
Aw,
Such a good partnership.
yes. And I just wanted to build on that, Kamisha. I think something that we don't, well, I think it's talked about, but how I work with quite a few different schools, a lot of different classes, a lot of different students and teachers, paraprofessionals, lots of different people, right? And I think about a classroom setting. And while we're talking about developmental language disorder, there are a lot of other conditions out there where language may be a factor in their difficulties, right? Whether it's a primary or secondary, well, DLD, it's primary, but other conditions might have language as the secondary factor. But it's still a difficulty. And if we think about a classroom of 20 and we think about DLD is 1 in 14, so there might be one or two students, but then we think about other conditions, might be autism, might be ADHD, might be dyslexia, might be anything else, but how many of those also have language difficulties as part and parcel of their conditions? And then, therefore, when we think about language and delivering language, because education is about everything's language. Whether you're going learning how to read, that's language in itself. You're having to understand the concept of a sound. You're having to understand the concept of joining those sounds or building up a word or breaking down a word. It's all part of language. It's just different levels or different types. But how do we learn how to think about language, right? Like I feel like it's everybody's job. And as an educator, as part of a school or even as part of a home, you're either nurturing students and helping them grow in their speech and language skills, but then at school you want them to understand academic concepts and you want them to provide evidence of their understanding, which is your written piece or your speaking piece. But then you go into university, you go into employment, it's still showcasing in some way. It is, you are doing something with that language. You're having a conversation with friends, you are doing something with the language. Yeah, it's, I'm not sure where I was going with that, but I just think to think about language not only for the 1 to 2 kids, but how many other kids might be affected by it.
Yes, yeah.
So can I jump in with
Yes,
one?
please.
So I was really thinking about that, and we tried to show that in our book about the birthday party. So on this page here, Jack and Molly, who are the neurotypical peers, they actually apologize because earlier in the story, they were doing an obstacle course. Dan and Daria each had their own struggles with it, using phrases, sentences with before and after, or even if, and they got mixed up. So Jack and Molly were really frustrated with them. And then they apologize and say, "Oh, yeah, thanks for reminding us about DLD. I'm so sorry that we got annoyed. Next time, we'll try to explain our games more clearly so everyone can have fun." And we're thinking about, yeah, it's not just the kids with DLD. It is also the kids who maybe are totally overwhelmed with the sensory experience. And that could be some of our kids with DLD. Birthday party is loud. There's so much at play. So what can we be doing in many different settings to it more accessible, make the child have more success because we're thinking about our language, we're thinking about speaking clearly for all kids who may struggle with language. I just wanted to add that because I thought of it when you were saying it, and then Camesha, you can take it away.
Yeah, no, um I didn't know if that was a question or a statement, but I I agree with just the magnitude of how it affects so many. And like I think that's where Janine and I's passion really like comes through is that it is everywhere. It's every part of a child's life into adulthood. And um and it's like not Yeah, and I feel like this revelation could really um, change up the trajectory of a child's life. And so, with that urgency, is where Dan and Daria and our book series kind of like thrive.
Mm.
Is that it is this is everywhere, and so we really want to. Um, I don't know. I feel like sometimes Janine and I feel like we want to like shout this message from like a rooftop, because it could be, um, without sounding dramatic, like life or death, like really important, like really detrimental to a child, like how they see themselves, how they show up in the workplace. It's just how they show up in their families. Yeah, it's really important.
And
Yeah,
Camesha, oh, sorry, Jenny.
go ahead.
I was just going to, that made me think about light bulb moments, right? When you see something or you feel seen, you feel heard, that's a part of representation, right? Like that you feel like it's almost that windows, mirrors, sliding doors kind of concept, thinking thinking through these characters, but those light bulb moments in you understand when you understand it, you understand yourself a little bit more that you didn't know. And I really like that about, and this happens for all of us, regardless
Hmm.
of who the human is, that there are many things we find difficult, but when we understand what's difficult, there is
Hmm.
acceptance in that. Not
Mhm.
because, oh, it's always going to be difficult. It might always be difficult, but now we know what's difficult and we know perhaps what to do about it, or even
Mhm.
if it's a small step forward.
Hmm.
Mhm. Yeah, even as an individual, I found that for myself,
Mm,
knowing, okay, I can anticipate now at my age, this is probably going to be challenging for me, but that's okay because other things are much easier for me.
mm,
Yeah, it is really validating. And when we see kids with DLD struggling with self-esteem, struggling with bullying,
mm,
struggling with their self-worth,
mm,
we can empower them to recognize, okay, this is what's hard for me. This is how my brain works, and this is what helps. I'm also really good at things. Dan in the story, he's a paper airplane making expert, and
mm,
that's a source of pride for him. Daria is the best painter in the class,
mm,
and so we also really want kids to be able to identify with what they're good at. Sometimes you're really good at making Lego, or you're awesome at, I'm looking at your background, building sandcastles, whatever it is, being able to have more of a balanced approach to think about your strengths, your talents, the things that make you you.
mm,
And yes, your DLD is a part of you, but it's not all of it. And you know what to do, or you're slowly learning what to do
yeah,
to help yourself in challenging situations. That can really change the focus because we don't want kids to be stuck in, I'm
Hmm.
not smart, or
mm,
I can't, I'm bad at this. I'm alone, I feel made fun of. We want them to also think about, yeah, but
Hmm.
mm,
I, and that's a thing we often actually mention to parents is if the child is struggling socially, find an area that they're really interested in. Maybe they love, I don't know, karate or something like this. So that can be a setting where they may have more social success because they have something in common with the other kids in the group. Maybe they are more familiar with the vocabulary related to that more special interest and they can connect more easily. There's also, yeah, all the contextual information can really help them. And so sometimes finding that thing for your child, finding what it is that they feel good at, and then nurturing that, sometimes even taking a break from speech therapy or putting the limited resources that you have into something like that where the child feels good and talented,
mm.
that can really help too on a social level and on a self-esteem level.
So good.
The other question I'd love to ask, and this might be a bit of a thinking question, but clear language has been a very big part of DLD. As
Mhm.
adults, how did you think about your own language, reflect on it, and refine it to make it clear?
Are you talking about in the podcasts or in the books?
No, just when you're communicating with students with DLD, how do you think through? And the reason I ask this question, Janine and Kamisha, is I so frequently I understand DLD, I understand the students, assess
Mhm.
them, diagnose them,
Mm-hmm.
um, provide recommendations.
Mm-hmm.
This is what will help these students. They will benefit from this. And then I think about the other person at the end of that report receiving it. Either it's a parent, a teacher, pediatrician, whoever is consuming that report. And I wonder, do they understand what language actually, what does clear language actually mean? Because we're so frequently in the habit of communicating, talking all the time. We're proficient users of language. Therefore, we can think quickly, talk quickly, get our message across quickly in lots of words. But when it comes to actually thinking through clear language, that takes time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. That's
Mm-hmm.
a good question. I try to be really mindful of using repetition.
Mm,
So, important concepts, repeating them in slightly different words, but just mentioning them repeatedly. Because
mm,
even when we're working with parents of kids with DLD, some of them have undiagnosed DLD. Some of them are just starting to think, wow, this was me as a kid too. I had similar struggles. Or any other, some of them are also dyslexic. So,
mm,
yeah, repeating frequently, that's been something that I've tried to work on. I like to reflect on, okay, how did that meeting go? How did I do as a professional
mm,
communicating this? Or I know at the beginning of my career, when I'm writing goals or writing reports, I wanted to use all the technical terms,
mm,
but I've come to realize that is usually not a very good idea. There's a certain context where that can be helpful, but let's try to break it down to parent-friendly language. Let's try to use examples. I find examples can be really helpful
mm,
as well. I talk to kids sometimes. It's easier to use words that you can draw a picture of,
mm,
but how often am I using those words where you can't easily draw a picture of it? Or when we're working on how do we make more complex sentences? How do we use connecting words and transition phrases? I don't want to use a lot of those when I'm trying to communicate with the parents or when I'm writing. I want to have more simple sentence structure and more simple vocabulary, but it's a journey because it as you said, we're so used to communicating in one way,
mm,
and language tends to be an area that is easier for us. It does take a lot of self-reflection
Mm-hmm.
to evaluate yourself. How did I do
mm,
with getting the point across? Did I talk too long? Did
mm,
I did I listen enough? Did
mm,
I check in with the parent in a way that's not condescending, but that's empowering? Did
Mm-hmm.
I ask them, okay, so what did you hear from me? Sometimes that can help too, and it can help you gauge understanding.
mm,
Um, so yeah, I think it's really a process, but a super important one. Yeah, so I
Mm-hmm.
love that you asked that question.
Mhm. I must say, RT, you've asked such really insightful questions. Um,
Thank
yeah,
you.
this has really been, um, uh, yeah, I just really appreciated your level of intentionality in your questioning.
Mm, so
Thank you.
good.
I and I and the other reason why really that question has been so important to me personally is very much I've just completed my master's in learning intervention, and part of that master's, we had to design a research proposal. So while it was an assignment, it would be something, if somebody was interested in it, they could actually go ahead to complete a PhD in it, right? But something that I constantly think about. So I speak English, think in English. It is my first language now. But I also have my Indian language is Gujarati, and I can read it, write it, speak conversationally,
Mm.
and understand it. But if it's complex, I find it difficult to do so. And the third language is Swahili, and that's the Kenyan language. It's shared between Kenya, Uganda, and Tanzania. But
Mm.
I can't speak that language. I can understand parts of it, perhaps conversational parts of
Mhm.
it. And all through schooling, we learned English as a second language. So from a very, very young age, we had learned to break it down, build it up, do manipulate it, think through the language from,
Mm.
I suppose, ever since I started going to school, because
Mhm.
that's what it was like. And then thinking through a language difficulty for somebody who speaks one language.
Mhm.
How are they thinking through elements of language that are so nuanced to be able to understand, okay, I have just said a sentence. It's a passive sentence. It's a past tense sentence. That's actually going to be difficult. It's a sentence with multiple clauses, with lots of filler words. And
Mm.
that was my reason for thinking through, we say clear language, but actually stating something simply is so difficult. If you,
Mhm.
we say
Mhm.
it in so many words.
Mhm. Mm.
Um,
That's a really good point.
Mhm.
and that was, yeah, just something that I'm hoping to do more with
Mhm.
that and think through more
Mhm.
of that, because a lot of the times these strategies seem like they're, oh yeah, we could do it, but actually
Mhm.
then thinking through, and if you're going deeper into it, what does that look like? When do you do it? How frequently do you do it? And how do you evaluate the progress and the effectiveness of that strategy?
Yeah, that's great. And that's something that we talk about a bit in our online community too, is
Mhm.
let's talk about what passive sentences are,
Mm,
or let's understand a little bit more of the lingo so then we can have more awareness. Because you're right, if you're monolingual
mm,
and you're not a language nerd, you're not thinking about those kinds of things. And so I think as parents, when they have a place where they could talk with other parents who get it, other parents who are on the journey, some of them
mm,
at the very beginning. Got many parents joining our group who say, my child was diagnosed today. And
Mhm.
then other parents who've been on this journey for 10, 15 plus years.
yeah.
And so to be able to talk to other parents who get it, to
Mhm.
be able, actually, I'm going to put that in our community. Let's talk about what clear language means because it's so, so important. Yeah, so my kids go to school completely in French. And I passed a bilingual exam in Quebec to say I could practice my profession in French, but I'm not a native French speaker.
Mm.
And now that my kids are so much better than I am, when I try to speak, sometimes they laugh. They think,
Oh.
your accent is so bad, or you said it like this, but it should be like that. And I'm aware, okay, I actually don't really want to try anymore sometimes, or it's really discouraging to feel like
Yeah.
you're bad at something. And so I feel like that has also given me empathy and got me thinking through some of this use of clear language. Because if they're rattling off and talking so quickly, or, okay, you used a really big word, but can you use simple words to explain to me what this means? I was speaking to a clinician in Quebec City yesterday, and she was speaking English, her second language. And there were some words where she had to say, wait, I don't know how to say this in English. I didn't know what the word actually meant in French either. And we actually realized that there might not be an equivalent word, but she was able to use simple words to explain what it meant. And ironically, it was about speaking in simple language to parents. Um, yeah, it when you get that awareness, or when you've been in a setting, even when parents go on a trip where they're trying to communicate and there's a breakdown, that can be really hard. But talking about it um, really can, I think, increase awareness and help parents to get thinking about what strategies are effective, or what types of communicative contexts are more challenging.
Mm.
Um,
Because that's where a lot of the frustration can possibly lie, right? Like, I've just said this. How is it not being understood? And I've said it
mm,
5 times, 10 times. How can I possibly break it down
mm,
more than what I'm trying to do? And it's that understanding, that awareness that what's in here might not actually be as clear as we think. And I say that with complete, I don't know what word I would use now, but even as a speech pathologist,
yeah.
oh, this is this activity like a few years ago. Oh, just go and do this. It's easy. Don't just go and do this. Do what?
Mhm.
How? What are the steps? And it's until people started really asking, and I feel like in a school setting, because teachers are taught to go step by step process, and in the lesson planning, and what is it going to look like now within this activity. It's And that's when I was like, wow, I really am not clear about,
Mm.
and it's not that I'm not clear only to people, but even within my own thinking. And that, if anything, that was my point of thinking through language and going, where am I not clear? Please tell me. And
Yeah,
then, yeah.
that's so You reminded me of actually a mom in our group in Australia, and
Mhm.
she said her one of her children was so frustrated with the older sibling with DLD because of that exact thing. The mom had explained it 5 times, and it wasn't going in. It wasn't resonating with the child with DLD. So the sibling was so frustrated, and I think the sibling's 7 years old, and so she's already got so many emotions related to all of this and how life plays out in their home.
Mhm.
But the mom said when she heard, not a boring lecture from mom and dad is the way that the parent phrased it, but she saw animated Dan and Daria in a 3-minute clip talking about what it was like for them as children with DLD. The sibling suddenly got it. And then she's not going to be perfect at it's not going to solve all the problems, right? Or she's not going to be perfect at modifying her language to be as clear as possible, but she's going to have the empathy now. And I think that is key, is that as parents, as clinicians, as teachers, we're not always going to get it right. But if we are approaching it with empathy, if we are trying our best, and even saying to the child or the client, the student, sometimes it's hard for me too to think of a way to express this, or I'm still learning myself, or I'm sorry that I made this mistake, or that I expected such and such. I think that that could be empowering for our kids with DLD to hear those words from us, that we're on the journey with them. We're learning too, and not everything is easy for us, but
Mhm.
let's work together because we love each other, because we are safe people for each other, and because we have empathy for you
Mhm.
as we learn and grow together. So thank you for being patient with me. Saying something like that to a child,
Yeah.
wow, that can turn it around completely, I think. And I do that as a parent sometimes, not all the time. I'm on the journey trying to figure it out. But when I remember to do that, or when it just flows out of me, I
Mhm.
really feel like it changes the dynamic with my child, because something that was a struggle, the focus was on what is going wrong,
Mhm.
suddenly becomes a moment of connection. And that's beautiful how we can turn it around like that sometimes. Though I often also get it wrong. And so for parents, I want everybody to know that we're not gonna always get it right, but we can try better next time. We can try a different approach. We can try to focus on connection or the process over the final product for the next time, because it's a journey.
Thank you so much, Jinean, Camesha, for taking the time to explain what you're doing, why you're doing it. Before we do finally wrap up, is there anything that I have missed asking you? We've covered quite a lot of ground, but anything that I haven't thought to ask?
Good question. This is a strategy I'm using right now, buying a little bit of time to give myself time to think. I try to teach that to my students too. You can say, let me think about that, and then have a little bit more processing time. But nothing's coming to me. I think you've been incredible, Artie. I think we have covered a lot. So, Camesha, did you have any final ideas?
Yeah, same. Your questions were so intentional that I think we got everything.
Yeah, well done. I think your podcast and the whole concept of what you do, Artie, is amazing.
Yes,
Thank you. Thank you so much. And thank you for taking the time, yeah, again, to share your journey with us. And for anybody that's going to be listening to this conversation, it will be available on Human Chapters YouTube channel, Human Chapters podcast. And I will make sure I get all the links for the books, your business, the Facebook community page, and yeah, anywhere that you'd like, anything else you'd like for me to share. But
Yeah.
thank you, everyone, and please share this conversation.
Sounds great. And you can provide our email address too if parents wanted to connect that way, or join us in our Facebook group. We'd love to have anybody and everybody join because we love growing and learning together. So yeah, thank you so much, Artie. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.